I'm not sure if it's a good or bad thing to follow the cook. It could be good because you're all sitting there with very happy tummies. It could not be as good because you're like, so what are you going to do that he didn't? So,
yeah.
This is a little science, a lot of pictures, and some stories. And I think in the discussion I said all the mushrooms from southeastern Georgia, but there are some from around the country and the world. But this is just a chance for you to see some of the things I've been able to find and some friends of mine have been able to find. So starting with A, the Agaricus campestris, the meadow mushroom. So some of the Latin, they're all going to have Latin names because that's what science does. But I want you to be able to understand, you probably know, but a lot of what we're going to see has all been named by old white guys from Europe. Because that's pretty much the ones who decided that science is going to be this way. It doesn't mean these mushrooms haven't been used for hundreds of thousands of years before that. It's just, it's a little bit like Eddie Izzard's little thing about, hey, I discovered America because I put a flag there. And all the Native Americans are saying, wait a minute. And Eddie's like, but do you have a flag? So now the question is, do you have a botanical name? So Agaricus campestris got named in 1753 by Carl Linnaeus, who was a Swedish scientist who basically started our Latin binomial botanical way of naming not just mushrooms, but all kinds of plants and things. But there is some reasons for it. So the word campestris, so this is the meadow mushroom. Campestris means of the fields. So there's a sense to some of the Latin words that they use, even if we don't know what the heck it means. So as a mushroom club officer, you don't know how many times I get this picture like this, with people saying, what is it, can I eat it? And I generously respond, you haven't given me enough information to tell you what it is, and sure you can eat it, but you most likely might die. So, I'm going to walk you through how to identify that mushroom. One thing I want to actually give you as a thought is to fully identify a mushroom, even the shelf mushrooms on wood. You need to pick it and turn it over. You need to see the underside. Otherwise, it's just right round off. So it's very important to turn it over. And once I turned this one over, this was in my yard, I had not seen it there before, I 90% knew exactly what it was. So firstly, the base is bulbous. So the stem comes down and then makes a nice bulb. It's not an egg like an empty egg, but it is round and bulbous. The other thing that's important for this mushroom is to notice that it's completely white on the stem. Because there is one that looks just like this, but has yellowing on the stem, which makes it actually poisonous, stomach poisonous. But this one will bruise reddish kind of give it up. But then also, if you move up, spoiler, if you move it up the stem, you can see the partial veil, which is called the annulus. And that's another thing to know to help identify that mushroom. And if I had picked that mushroom when it was a little tiny, just coming out of the ground and flipped it over, I would not have seen those beautiful salmon pink gills. I would have just seen solid white veil covering the other side. Because when it was small, the spores were not sexually mature. So the mushroom protects So as the cap opens, that veil pulls away from the outer edge, and that sticks to the stem. And then if you look at those beautiful pink salmon-colored gills, that's another thing that helps me identify it. So then the next thing I did was cut off the cap, bring it inside, put it on a piece of paper, cover it with a little container, wait for a couple hours, and then lift it off. And that is the same mushroom that had those salmon pink gills, because it has spore laden. It shot all the spores out. And in every guidebook that you would use, if you're looking at that mushroom, it would tell you that it has dark chocolate brown spores. So that was the final thing to let me know that it was the American Sam pastures. And then the next step, of course, is to cut it up and put it in the pan, because it was very tasty. So this is the Amanita jacksoniana. And one of the reasons you can tell it's Amanita is it comes out of that little egg casing. And this one has a very yellow stem, yellow scales. And it was actually not officially named until 1984 by a Canadian mycologist. And it is a choice edible, and we call it the American Caesars, because there's a Caesar mushroom like this in Italy, which is eaten and really enjoyed. And so they used to think it was Amanita caesarea here. So they did DNA and realized that it's a completely different species. But this is one, we don't really recommend eating lots of Amanitas, but this is one that you are safe to eat. So the next picture is not a mushroom that I found, but I wanted to include it because it's an amazing mushroom. It is the Amanita galactica. And if you know the Amanita muscaria, which is the typical toadstool red mushroom with white spots on it, this is one that is pure black with little white spots on it. It's really beautiful. And one of the reasons I have that up there, this was found in the Andes of southern Chile. And it was found and named by Juliana Pucci and another woman named Benson. And Juliana has spoken to our club a few times, and she is actually kind of like the mycologist from the country of Chile. And so I wanted to actually show that there are people naming mushrooms that aren't all dead white guys from here. So, and I would encourage lots of people to get out there and think about naming mushrooms. Now, this is a weird one. You don't see it very often. And it is the Foray Committee. It's often called star bearer or the powdery piggyback mushroom. And it is, I'm running this, okay, back, there we go. It is actually, that's the mushroom right there. Because it is a parasite growing on another big, full, usually Russula mushroom. And spores land on top of the mushroom, and it parasitizes it. It starts growing up on top of it. And it is, one of the reasons they also call it the star bearer mushroom is that the spores are star-shaped. So when you look at the microscope, you'll see little tiny stars. And that's not the usual shape for spores. And I found this at Morgan Falls and Sandy Springs. And I've seen it twice in the same place. This one is one you'll see often kind of fall, wintry. This one is incarnatus, which is also could be called Fleetia incarnatus. It's the coral pink Marulius. And one of the things, it's not edible, it's pretty lovely as a white spore print, but one of the things that is This is a parasite on false turkey tail. So you're only going to see it on dead logs if there are false turkey tail already growing there. So that's another way to be able to identify it. And it's a really cool color. So this is Cornelia Cho, the violet webcam. And violet webcam is the violet court. And one of the interesting things about Cornelius is rather than solid tail on the underside, where you pick and turn it over, it has this webbing. So that webbing would look a little more solid, but instead of solid tail, you would just see lots of the little lines of the web. And this one is one of the Cornelius that's considered edible, but Cornelius can get you a little sick. So I'd be very careful about those. And they always, Cornelius has rust-colored spores, and often you'll be able to see, like if it's growing, you can see on the leaves of the ground underneath it, you can see some of the brown spores. So that helps you know it. And this was also named in 1753 by Carl Linnaeus back in Sweden. And he actually wrote a book called Species Plantarum, which was included here. And one of the things when they first started naming mushrooms in the mid-1700s is they called everything Agaricus. There's either Agaricus or Boletus. And it took a while before different genuses started breaking out. And we're going to get to this later, but there is an association which manages the International Code of Botanical Names. Not just for mushrooms, but for plants. And if you're naming a new species and or a new genus, you have to get their approval. They vote on it and decide what the name is. So these are fun. These are a couple polypores, which are the shelf mushrooms. And once again, Paul? It's decided that there's not a device back.
That's all good. I know what's going on. I think it's just unhappy because I unplugged the other device.
Tech waves. Here we are. Awesome. Big round of applause for Paul. Now, not only does he organize this, but he helps run time. So these are two polypores, or shelf mushrooms, that grow on dead wood, and they look almost identical on top. But when you flip them over, one has very thick walls over their gills, and this one has very thin. And they are both white rot focused. We're going to talk about white rot and brown rot in a minute. So if it gets too sciencey, you can put your fingers in your ears and get up and walk out or just say, no, tell me more. But you'll notice that their names are Tidalia quercina, and quercina quercus is the name for oak. So that lets you know that one grows on oaks. And the Tidaliolopsis confragosa, it often grows on some oak and a lot of willows. And one of the things about both these mushrooms is we use them to make paper. Because chop them up, put them in the grinder, in the blender, some water, and it makes a really great slurry for making paper. And one thing about its name is you can see the same root, Tidalia, and that's where Daedalus. If you know your Greek mythology, Daedalus was Icarus' father, and he was the guy who designed that's why, since it has the maize kind of connection. All right, brown fungus versus white rye fungus. So, trees are made of cellulose and lignin, and brown rye fungus attacks the cellulose but leaves lignin alone, and so you end up with these brown kind of hues. I'm sure we've probably all seen something like that when we're walking in the woods and seeing this log made up of all these little squares. Whereas the white rye fungus, it can degrade cellulose and the lignin, and so it basically leaves this kind of bleached remnants of the wood there. So now you know the difference between brown rye and white rye. The dryad cell, the pheasant's back. So reports thrombosis or polymerase thrombosis. It's also a white rye fungus that rots the earthwood of the trees it's growing on. Only grows east of the Rockies, and when it's very young, it is edible. Usually it's cooked the outer edges, but when you pick it fresh and smell it, it smells a lot like watermelon. And we have a story of a good friend of ours who's been in the mushroom world for decades, who lives in Concord, Massachusetts. She picks it and makes a vegetarian matzo ball soup. And we've had it, and it's delicious. But she talked about she had a Seder, and she had her good friend, Dr. Andrew Weil, over having it with us. He kept walking over the pot, looking at it, coming back, walking the pot. Finally said, "Are you sure there's no chicken in here?" Because you can really, if you know how to cook it well, you don't have to have the meat. And one of the things about the common name dryad saddle is, I'm going to let you know a secret how science works sometimes. So Gary Lakoff, he was the editor of the Audubon Guide from the 80s. It's one of the small, thick, brown books. It's got tons of pictures. He was approached by Audubon and asked to edit a guide for mushrooms from North America. They didn't have them yet. So he's getting all these photographs from all these people he knows. And then Audubon says, "Oh, and by the way, every mushroom has to have a common name on it." And Gary's like, they don't all have common names. A lot of them are just the Latin binomials. And Audubon said, "We don't care, they have to have common names." So what Gary did was get about 8 to 10 of his mushroom friends over to his house, have a bottle or two of whiskey, beer, and then he would just hold up a picture and say, "What do you want to call it?" And they are the ones who came up with the name dryad saddle. They're the ones who came up with the name lobster mushroom. Yep. So science can, if well lubricated, can work in many fun ways. So this is an Enzaloma curly, and it's the beautiful blue pink pill, and it can be almost a dark black blue. And we have found this before in DeKalb County when we were hunting it. The thing about Enzalomas is there are over 1,000 of them in the genus. So I don't know anybody who can just pull one up and give you the species name right away. And ento means inner, and loma means fringe or hem. So it has along the edge underneath, it has a very beautiful kind of fringe logo. And it's reasonably hard to find. And so that was the ento loma, and curly leaves are blue. So if you know the Latin, some of it makes sense to you. And I'm guessing many of you might have found ento loma which is the abortic entomology, or a lot of people know the shrimp of the woods. And this was one that they weren't really sure about. Like in this 50s and 60s and 70s, they just thought it was an entomoma that was coming out of the ground, decided to stop growing, and just kind of reported itself. And then in the 80s, they decided, oh, they noticed that it was always growing around honey mushrooms, so they decided that the honey mushroom was affecting the entomoma and making it turn into this little aborted egg. Finally, they found out in the late 90s that the entomoma is actually attacking the honeys, and the little shrimpy white ball you're finding is actually an imported honey mushroom that's been imported by the entomoma. And it does have a little bit of shrimp flavor to it when you cook it. And we find it around here now. Is actually a good time to find it. Something that's just telling you they saw a bunch of it out of the woods. And this is the Exudoporus crossbreed. It used to be called the Boetus crossbreed. And it's also called the apple bully because of that bright red. And it's super shiny and sticky. We did a walk in, I think, August out in Wilburn area and soon-to-be Gap Park there. And we've had hundreds of things. And while this one is edible, they do ask you to take caution because there are some red torn bullies that will make you pretty sick. But it's so sticky that you can really tell this one from the others. And it was first described scientifically in 1874, and it has olive brown spores. And one of the things is, it was named by a Unitarian minister, John Lewis Russell, who named it for his friend, who was an amateur mycologist named Charles Christopher Frost. And they actually had like 3 names back then. But one of the things about the naming procedure is you can't name a mushroom after yourself. If you're the one who finds it, you can't name it after yourself. So they're often named after friends or star systems or any kind of different things. So, and sometimes there are people who get revenge on somebody they don't really like. There's a particular stinkhorn, which is super smelly, very phallic, and it's called Ravenel's stinkhorn. And there was somebody who did not like Mr. Ravenel, who was another mycologist. So he saw this very phallic stinkhorn and said, I'm going to name it after him. And here is the beefsteak mushroom, Phyxomina hepatica, and it comes down at the base. Okay. That's supposed to be really red, so I think the protector is. Everybody come up with the mushroom. It's really red, and it's very sticky, and when you cut it, pick it off the tree and cut it oozes out this red. It looks a little bit like blood. And this is one of the few that we will eat a little bit of raw, because we really do not encourage eating raw mushrooms. And this one has a very lemony, acidic taste to it. We had a friend who was a chef, Bill Green from Greenwoods, and we brought one in, and he just sliced it super thin and made a carpaccio plate for us. It was really yummy. So, fistule means tube, and this has, even though it has pores on it, it's got lots of little tubes in it. So, fistulina means small tubes, and hepatica means liver-like. And if you look at it, it looks kind of like a liver, but It's a really fun, tasty mushroom. This, forays, granulans, is the sweet knot. It grows on beech and birch trees, and it's really cool how it kind of cascades over itself and makes this horseshoe-shaped thing. And one nice or interesting fact is this is only found in North America. So you don't find it anywhere else in the world. It's another white rot fungi that's rotting the kind of inner part of the heartwood of the tree. And it dries pretty well. You can still, what you'll often find is a bunch of older brown ones on a tree with some fresher ones growing on the top. And we found these actually at Low Water Park at Emory on a sanctioned walk. And this is Grifola frondosa, held by the president of the Mushroom Club of Georgia, who also goes by my lovely wife, Cornelia Cho. And we were just back at this tree yesterday, and we picked it two half that size. And that's the head of the woods, the vitality. It's a very yummy, tasty mushroom, and usually growing on dead or dying oaks. And what's interesting about it is rather than just a lot of mycelium that it grows from, it actually grows from some erosion, which is like a little underground potato kind of shape. So that grows from that. And this is another polypore called Hexagonia inoides. And we picked this one down in Melbourne, Florida, because it is a semi-tropical polypore. Once again, shell fashion. And the top of it is really, it's hairy, which I had not seen a lot of. And then when you flip it over, all those little pores, if you get close, they are hexagon shaped rather than round. And it only really grows along like the Gulf Coast here. But that's the only time I've ever seen it, was that time we were down in Melbourne. This is the nose dragon, it's oak dragon, or oak butterfly. And you'll often see a lot of these, like in Anderson Park, where you walk around those really big old trees. In between some of the roots, you'll often see a big size of leaves. And it oozes out an amber or red kind of liquid out of those little shiny blobs there. And it's eventually killing the tree. But it could be, 2 feet across, huge. All right, this is going to notice the leafless, which is the chocolate. Everybody here probably has heard of chocolate. Chocolate does not grow down here as much as everybody hopes when they see something growing on a tree and it's chocolate. It tends to grow in northern North Carolina, especially in the upper Midwest, Wisconsin. People make teas of it, you can buy all kinds of chocolate tea. But I would like to warn you, don't drink a couple cups of chocolate tea every day. They had actually had 2 deaths reported because one of the things chocolate is full of is oxalates, which is, the stuff that's in spinach and other things. And the 2 people who died, they basically kind of crushed their kidneys by having so many oxalates. So, a lot of mushrooms, like a lion's mane, you can eat as much as you want, and as much powder of that. But there are certain mushrooms that you do need to use in moderation. And you just also need to use common sense. When the chef was talking, somebody asked about cooking chestnut mushrooms. Well, one of our speakers is coming next year runs the New Hampshire Mushroom Company. And he had sold some chestnut mushrooms to somebody he knew. And the guy called him up the next morning and said, "There's something wrong with your mushrooms. I just had to chestnut mushrooms, can you tell me a little more, like how much did you eat? He said, well, it was so good I cooked and ate all 3 pounds. So, of course you're going to have an upset stomach. I mean, that much fiber. So use some common sense. You're already not laughing. So, one little rabbit hole you can go down if you are ever interested is that there is a huge variety of viruses that infect fungi. And it has a lot of different effects on them, but this is one of the effects they have. This is a regular bull leaf, just a little round cap, kind of orangish, and and you can see to the left, like it should look like. So I was hiking through, actually in Oregon Falls again, and I saw these, and I said, what the heck is wrong with that? So I took the pictures, sent them to some friends, and they said, oh yeah, it's been infected from some kind of virus. So we're not the only ones that have to watch out for viruses. And we can actually exchange viruses with fungi. We have a lot of the same DNA. This is a fun mushroom, Ischnoderma resinosa. It's the resinous one. It's really soft and spongy, and you can use, especially once you get the outer edge, and cook it. And you have to cook it a long time, but I made like a kind of almost like a beef Wellington thing, because it has a really kind of meaty, chewy substance to it. And there are some other mushrooms that they call forays, which are hard mushroom. This is in that same family. And it does exude a little bit of liquid when you cut it. And Alan Burke, this guy called the Forager Chef. If you've never seen his website, he has a great website and a great YouTube channel. My video about and Alan is actually going to be our club speaker in April, and also the cooking demos. He's also going to be speaking in the Montana program, because we helped arrange that. But he has some really good recipes online about using this mushroom. So, here we have chicken in the woods. And Whitmore's Cincinnatus and Sulphurus. Sulphurus has the yellow underside. Cincinnatus has the white underside. And there's another species here, I think it's Gilbertian or something that they found that also has a white underside. It's a very fine, tasty mushroom. And you know how the white meat chicken, when you can pull it apart, it has those little tendrils that kind of come off of it? This has the same thing. People do get some stomach upset from this mushroom. So one of the things that we recommend, that actually Trad Connor was talking later tonight to us about, is whenever we're going to cook and eat this mushroom, we'll take the amount we're going to eat that time, and I will boil it for 10 minutes. Because if you boil it, the water turns kind of orange, you pour off the water, and that seems to help draw out some of the compounds that upset the stomachs. Then you just run cool water over it until it's cool enough, take it out, squeeze some of the water out. And one, you kind of pre-tenderize it, and also pre-cook it so you don't have to cook it as long. And then you can cook it just like you cook chicken. And how many good times, Paul? The story I like to share about this is there was a woman named Morris in Connecticut. She was part of the American Mycological Association. And she was also a member of her local garden club. And her garden club would have monthly meetings in the potluck. And so she was bringing every kind of mushroom she could find and cooking all these dishes. Well, after a couple of years, she found a really good chicken in the woods. So she made a chicken cacciatore casserole. She brought it to the meeting. At the end of the meeting, all the garden club members stood up and said, Marge, I think finally not bringing the mushroom dish. Because they just knew it was chicken. And here is the great shiitake. Beautiful mushroom, really great, meaty taste. Never eat this raw. Never slice it and put it on your salads raw. So, I don't have the picture with me, but there is a condition called shiitake flagellant dermatitis. And if you, not everybody gets it, but some people, they eat this raw, 48 to 72 hours later, they'll wake up, their back is itching, they'll look in the mirror, and they'll look like somebody's whipping them. They just have, oh, this red rash all over their back, and it itches like that. And since it happens 48 to 72 hours later, they often don't have the connection of what caused it. And I really didn't know anybody that it ever happened to. And then on one of our walks about a month ago, one of our members said, oh yeah, I can't even cook shiitakes. If I eat a cooked shiitake, I start to get that rash all over my back. So this is just a good advertisement for why you need to cook your mushrooms. You get a lot more nutrients and definitely a lot more flavor. And this is the light of perlata, the gems that we fall. These are the little puffballs that we get that grow in these big clumps off of the ground because they're something to grow off of the wood. Very tasty. Once again, when we cook these, even though they're only like this small, we always cut every one of them in half before we put it in the pan. Because it needs to be solid white with, I like to say, the consistency of stale marshmallow. You know, there's a little give, but it's still pretty hard and firm. And when I give this talk to school groups, they get it. This is one of the times where Latin can be fun. So, perlatum means widespread, psycho means wolf, and perdum means fart. This is the widespread wolf fart. And some scientists in the 1800s thought this would be a great name for a mushroom. But you know, we've all seen puffballs doing their thing. I'm not sure where the wolf fart came, but I can see where the fart came. And here we have our lovely yellow ones, our naturals. And very tasty mushroom. Out west, we get gone and hunted the bird morels. We don't really get bird morels here, although I know people in Virginia have been doing some studies on some of the berms there. But out west, they don't get these beautiful, we call them bronze and yellow naturals. Really, really tasty. Another reason to cook mushrooms. In fact, we have somebody from the CDC toxicology department with us to help us with this story. Is about a year and a half ago in April, there was a restaurant in Bozeman, Montana called Dave's Sushi. That's a warning for me right there. But anyway, they had gotten a shipment of cultivated morels from China, because there are certain species of morels that you can cultivate. They got a box from China. On Friday night, they made a really hot marinade with soy sauce and marinade and all this stuff. And they poured the hot sauce over the raw morels, on half the morels, and served them on the sushi plates that night. On Saturday, they took the leftover cold marinade, poured it over the rest of the raw morels, and served them. And was it 14 or 15 people who went to the hospital? About 15 people went to the hospital, and 2 people died from eating morel mushrooms because they were raw. And they had some pre-existing conditions, but you don't want to really mess around, and you need to do your research about how to cook it. And the thing about mushrooms is you really can't overcook them. You can overheat them and, burn them. But on a lower temperature, I cook our morels at least 30 minutes. So, and then this is a fun little thing that you'll see out often, especially early spring, it sticks. And it's Naturalist alveolaris. And it has these really cool kind of oval shaped pores on the underside. And if any of you know some anatomy, you'll know that the little chambers in our lungs are alveolar layers, alveolus. And so that's the shape of what is in our lungs. And it's a really beautiful mushroom. Can't eat it, but you can certainly enjoy looking at it. And this is the Nigroporus venosus, the black pore polyp. So Nigroporus, black pore, venosus means wine, because it has this beautiful kind of dark purpley color on it. And it is another shelf mushroom that is busy, helping break down the tree. But the mushrooms are made of something called hyphae. Hyphae are very thin, little hair-like structures that make the larger mycelium. And there are 3 kinds of hyphae. Now we're doing science. The first kind of hyphae is called generative. And all mushrooms have that kind of hyphae in it. The mushrooms that have only that kind in it are called monomytic, or mono means one. There's a second kind of hyphae called skeletal, and it kind of grows out and branches a little more. And if the mushroom has a generative and a skeletal, it's called diabetic, because it's got 2 kinds of hyphae. And then there's a third kind of hyphae called binding, and it's more of what makes it really stick together and be a really thicker, stronger mycelium. Of course, that's trimetic. And like turkey tail mushrooms, they are trimetic. And part of it is the hyphae, instead of just going one direction, you go like 3 different directions, and it really binds together and makes mushrooms really strong. And there's an awful lot of solutions. The jack-o'-lantern. This is a beautiful mushroom. Comes out midsummer through fall, and it grows on wood. Some poisonings we've had reported to us are people thinking those are chanterelles. One, if you're having a poor chanterelle season, suddenly everything starts looking like chanterelles. And 2, people are ever hopeful, slightly desperate, and want to grab their chanterelles. There's 4 easy ways to tell them apart. Because jack-o'-lanterns always grow on wood, but sometimes it's growing on barrier. Chanterelles always come out of the ground. 2, chanterelles always grow singly or maybe in a group of 3 or 4. Jack-o'-lanterns, you can see that huge amount there. It's always going to come up in that kind of clump. And what's interesting is it comes out of one base. 3, this has true gills, where chanterelles are either smooth or have these kind of thicker ridges. But 4thly, when we cook our chanterelles, we always cook them in half before we cook them, because they should be white on the inside. And this mushroom, jack-o'-lantern, is always orange all the way through. Jack-o'-lanterns will not kill you, but we like to say this is one of the mushrooms that makes you wish you had. We'll be sitting on the toilet all night, leaning over the bathtub. And that is no fun. So, once again, I'm showing you some things that you won't necessarily normally just see when you're out. So, the bigger mushroom with the beautiful kind of violet edge to it, that's the violet tooth polyp, Trichaptidae. It's the one, it almost looks like a turkey tail on top. But if you flip it over, it is when you get them when they're a little older, often maybe this time of year or a month ago, and you take out your loop and look closely, they have a parasite growing on them that looks like little matchsticks. They call it a Foray Committee. And those are Phaeophilium, polypuri, and it's really fun to look those under a loop or under a microscope. And that's those little black fingerpins. This is the only mushroom they grow. So there's some really specialized kind of environments here. This guy, the Forays caddis, which is called rooting polypore. So polypores are the shelf mushrooms. And that doesn't look like a shelf mushroom. When I first saw that, I was like, what kind of bolete is that? Because it had a pored underside, it didn't have gills. I couldn't figure it out, because I picked it and took it back. And finally, as I did more research, that root is growing like berry wood. It's growing like a polypore wood on a log, except that it has a stem. So you have to actually kind of dig deep when you're doing research and not just make initial assumptions. Oh, look, it's got pores on the underside, it's got a stem, so it must be some kind of bolete. This is the Sapparella. And I took this picture at big trees out in Sand Springs. You might hunt Sand Springs a lot because we're up there. This is the brittle stem mushroom. And it comes out early spring. It's kind of fuzzy on the top and actually on the stem. And it usually has a big grouping that comes out of one single base. And so it's one of those that you can find early in the year. And this is the stinky squid. The Pseudophilus fusiformis. And the thing about snake horns is the way that they spread their spores is they have this really yucky brown stuff called lima that is growing right inside there that smells like something died. And so it draws insects to it. They kind of roll around in it, they get the spores on them, and they spread the spores. I just heard Arlene Bissett give a talk about 4 weeks ago about spore dispersal. She and her husband now have written a lot of mushroom books. And one of the things I didn't know about skink horns is that leaf, besides having the spores in it, it actually has a laxative in it. So that when the flies get in there, eat it up, and fly away, they pretty much poop it out really fast. And the skink horn wants to keep, its spores in the area where it's growing. So it makes the fly drop the spores much sooner than it normally would. Isn't nature fun? And this is the Foray Committee, which is a really nice, bright orange red shelf mushroom. Usually only about that big, grows on wood, and it's got pores on the underside, and it's bright orange red. And that's another one we use in paper making, because it helps turn the paper this beautiful red color. And here we go. This is one of the psilocybin species, which there are a lot of psilocybin species. And I was looking very hard for a mushroom that started with a Q, trying to make it through the alphabet. So this is psilocybin quebecensis. So this one is only found in the province of Quebec. And you can see it growing on Canada, which is where a lot of psilocybins grow. They do grow also on wood chips. And the Georgia Mushroom Festival, Alabama Mushroom Festival, here, there's a lot of education and more speakers talking about psilocybin mushrooms. But just to let you know, if you get stopped and you have a mushroom, psilocybin mushroom that gets identified, it is state of Georgia still a Schedule 1 felony. And, you know, how much they actually prosecuted is another question. But for something to be a Schedule 1 felony, it has to have no medical benefit, which obviously has huge medical benefits. And 2, it has to be highly addictive. Cocaine is a Schedule 2. I mean, that tells you this logic. But when I have plenty of friends who will use psilocybin actually for spiritual, not just a party drug, but for a spiritual journey. And every one of them, I talk to them after the experience, they will say, you know, it was really great. It was really profound. And, you know, I might do it again in 6 months. I mean, that's how addictive it is. So we are, you know, as a 501c3, we can't do a lot of political stuff, but we are helping work with people to advocate decriminalizing. That's the first step you want to get to before you even talk about legalizing, but just the decriminalization. So, and one of our speakers we had come for probably the first 8 to 10 years we were in the club, we wouldn't use the P word. We wouldn't say psilocybin just because it was still during mushrooms, but as more studies and research is happening, it's like, okay, it's time to really support the medicine and science. So we had Dr. Peter Hendricks from the University of Alabama, Birmingham, come talk. He uses psilocybin for helping people overcome cocaine addictions. And almost everybody who took it was in the study, did not relapse, and almost everybody who took it said, this is one of the most profoundly spiritual experiences I've ever had in my life. So there's a lot going on there, and unfortunately we're still suffering under the war on drugs in the 70s and 80s. So this next mushroom I found in Illinois, and it's called the American peach mushroom, and it's actually fairly rare. It doesn't tend to happen down here, but I happened to be visiting family, saw this up in Illinois, saw this on a stump, and said, what the hell? I mean, I thought maybe something had gotten knocked over that was supposed to kill some underside, but this is the upper part of the mushroom, and those are good, like 1/4 inch high. And what the purpose is, you know, when people ask me, why does a mushroom do this? Why is it poisonous? Why does it have that? I tend to say, well, I've never been able to interview the mushroom to find out why. So we don't know the science behind it, but it's really damn cool. And now this is a slime mold. Slime molds are technically not fungi, but we treat them as close cousins. And often they're the only things you're going to find sometimes when you're out hunting. But this is the chocolate tube slime mold, and it grows in these little clumps with this very thin base to it. And this is my knife here, brushing across it. And that's all the spores coming off of the slime mold, that beautiful brown. So, and often grows on dead conifers and dead pines. So, keep your eye out for that. That's one of the fun things about mushroom hunting is there's lots of really cool, very small stuff. And this is the Campanella, Erythromatosa, or the Paxilla that's developed into in packs. And this is a really cool mushroom in that whole bottom part of the stem is like suede. It's just really soft and sweet, a little bit fuzzy, and it's a very distinctive mushroom. When you find it, you know that you found it. And keep your eye out for those. And this is the truncated club. So it's like club fungi. So there are coral fungi, but there are ones that are called club. And when I first saw these when I was early in mushrooming, I thought it was like some kind of stunted chaparral. And took it home and cooked it. These are edible, but they are really bitter. So it was, I'm not going to do that again, but I am going to take a lot of pictures. And of course, there's trees on color, the great turkey tail. It's a beautiful mushroom. We already found out it has triametic, I think. It's a saprophobic mushroom, which means it's a wood decayer. It has a bunch of different lookalikes. So this is one that when you pick it and turn it over, when it's fresh, it's going to be beautiful, pure white on the underside. And if you look closely, it's got lots and lots of little tiny round pores. And it's got, I think it's like 10 pores per millimeter or 2 millimeters. It's really, really sweet. And this is a good medicinal. People often ask me, oh, can I eat it? And I always say, well, just like you can eat a piece of paper, sure. But it does make great teas and great tinctures. And this is one that we sometimes will just chew when we're out hiking. It's almost makes like a little bit of a gum. It's a nice, has a really nice flavor to it. And in Japan, there's a drug called PSK, or Crestin, that they have been using since 1977 that they give to chemo patients. And it greatly reduces the amount of chemo you have to get, and it actually greatly reduces the side effects of chemo. And of course, because this is an industrialized country like Japan, it's given free to all chemo patients. Who here has seen Fantastic Fungi on Netflix? All right, I figured there'd be a lot of that. The rest of you, if you have Netflix, go look it up. Fantastic Fungi, Paul Stamets. It's got a really great story about his turkey tail that he uses and his mother's breast cancer. And Paul Stamets is like one of the godfathers of popular modern mushrooming. So that's one reason he's on the film a lot. The other reason he's on the film a lot is he paid to have it made. You know, it's his right, and I'm really glad he did. It's a really cool film. And about a third of the people that you will see interviewed on that film have been speakers at our club in person. So we're still working on it. But really cool mushroom. This one, the umbrella polypore, Polyporous umbrella lattice. It looks, sometimes you'll see it, you think that you found the head of the woods with maitake, because it's at the base of the tree and there's a lot of heads to it. But as you get closer, you're going to see each one of those has just a little thin stem with a kind of round top. And it makes this huge cluster. And I don't know if this one's edible or not. Look it up. It is edible. Okay, pick it on over here. But it's a very cool mushroom that is worth seeing, even if it isn't maitake. And this one we found up in Minnesota when we were hiking around the park, and it was on a log that had fallen into the water, and it was probably at least 12 inches across, maybe even a little more. And it has all these really cool kind of hairs hanging down. And this beautiful underside of this rosy color. And it's the Variella bombacina. That is a fun species name. I can see naming and take bombacina. That's a fun mushroom to see. Reasonably rare. I've never found one down here. And then my wife found this a few years ago in Roswell, and that's about this big. And it's kind of another little kind smothered with these little kind of bulbous mushrooms. It's two things. It's either Xerophilina kaufmanni or Xerophilina campanella. They crossfade tulip mushroom with golden trumpet. So how do you tell the difference? What wood is growing? The kaufmanni grows on hardwoods, and campanella grows on conifers. So that's part of mushrooming also is knowing your trees. And it's one of the things our club does is at least once or twice a year we have tree experts in the club who will lead a tree walk so that to help you start to learn some of the trees. Because I know some people who are hunting morels and they'll start off like this because they want to see what trees there are before they start looking down. Because here in the south, our morels tend to grow on the tulip tree, around the tulip tree or ash trees. So it helps to know them. Alright, we're on the home stretch on the axis. So Sileria longibeans, this is the dead man's fingers. And sometimes it looks like this hand coming out of the ground, black and wrinkly. And it's pretty cool. And it grows all along right next to dead trees. And then here's the Zygomacubensis. And you're seeing two pictures here of two things that look very different. So the Zygocericor horarium Fungi. So that is how the mushroom starts out. And it's in its asexual stage. It does not have spores that will spread. But that thing will turn into this. And this is one of those places where that association for the International Code of Botanical Names has come in. Because when these were first found, they thought they were two different mushrooms. Because they look so distinctively different at the different time of year. So eventually, doing DNA, they found out, oh, it's the same mushroom. So then, but they already had two separate names. So then, this International Association of the Code of Botanical Names, they had to decide which one are we going to call it. So officially, this is this. Sileria. They decided that it was the fertile stage would be what we call mushroom time. So, a bunch of people sitting around, they dig stuff up. This is a yellow houseplant mushroom. The Leucoprinus purpurni. And you can see these a lot inside of houseplants coming out of the pot. You don't want to eat them, and you certainly can't enjoy how cool they are. And, alright, here we are with the zombie and the Ophiocordyceps. So, these ants, we took this picture. We find a lot of these on little maples next to, you see ant piles are looking up at the trees. And that's the ant, and that's the mushroom coming out of the ant. And how many of you have heard about zombie ants? I'm sure quite a few of you. So this is the classic zombie ant down in South Central America. We got a chance to meet the professor from the University of Pennsylvania who's doing that research. So what happens is the spores of the cordyceps mushroom land on the ant. Bless you. And it starts drilling a little hole in the shell of the ant. These are some of its digestive enzymes. So drill a hole in the shell of the ant. And then the mycelium starts growing in, eating the interior body of the ant, replacing it with mycelium. So it's basically mummifying the ant from the outside in. So this is happening for a little while, and then at a certain stage, it takes over the actions of the ant. And people have said it looks like the ants are kind of drunk, staggering around. And we used to think that it connected emotions, but then with more research they found out that it actually grows like a protective barrier around the brain because you want to keep all your automatic functions happening. So the mycelium, and Paul, I'm finishing up with this one just because I haven't been much of the time. But anyway, the mycelium connects to all the nerves in the ant, and somehow it starts making it move. So the ant staggering around, it tells the ant, go over to this bush, climb up the bush about 25 to 30 centimeters, crawl on the underside of the leaf. So you can see how this is the underside of the leaf. Crawl on the underside of the leaf, and then it tells the ant, open your mandibles, take a big bite of the leaf. And as soon as the ant bites into the leaf, the mycelium inside the ant releases a compound chemical that basically melts all the muscles of the mandibles of the ant cannot open its mouth. So it's stuck on the underside of the leaf for the next 6 hours as it's alive, being finished, being mummified. So once it's mummified, then it will send up its fruiting bodies. It's got all the spores on top. So that's all pretty creepy. Who watched The Last of Us? Okay. It's not going to happen to us. You know, they had this whole theory on the show about climate change getting warmer and they adapted to us as our body temperature. Animals' body temperature hot for that. My wife was a doctor. She heard about it. She said, huh, that's so stupid. There are so many other bugs that are going to kill us before cordyceps. Look up Candida auris if you want to be scared. So that's all creepy, but there's one extra little element of creepiness. It's where this ant is located on the underside of the leaf. 60 to 70% of the ants that this happened to are directly over pathways where the other ants walk. Because, you know, if you want to really reproduce, you want targets for your spores. So somehow, this organism that doesn't have a brain, doesn't have eyes or any other things, tells this ant, go over here, go on this bush, and then bite down, because this is the place for me. And one last thing is, they have found in leaf fossils that are inside rocks, that are millions of years old, they have found in the leaf little pieces of mandible stuck in the leaf. So this has been going on